Hey, hello, I'm Wren Ribeiro, and I want to connect with you about peace and justice. We are interviewing women who labor for peace, as we have forever and always will, until we all feel peace in our homes, our workplaces, our communities, and especially our bodies and minds. This initiative is named Mujéres Co-Labor for Peace. It's a show of intimate conversations with justice workers who are healing their self and communities from the effects of misogyny, capitalism, and climate change. Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Wren Ribeiro, and I wish you complete wellness and lasting peace. This Mujéres Co-Labor for Peace show is about taking steps, including baby steps and mother may I steps, to heal the effects of misogyny, capitalism, and climate change. And this episode welcomes Renee Toll-DuBois, a farmer, a ceremony holder, a queer and curious social justice explorer, and my friend. My wish is for listeners and viewers to drop into our conversation, one that will likely touch on connection to the land and water, rediscovering indigeneity for those of us identified as white, and any number of tangents relative to gender and healing, and that afterwards you feel a bit more inspired and peaceful about life. Renee, you have watched a few episodes and know how we start with a heart check-in. So, how, my friend, is your heart right now? I have this
I feel very honored to be here with you. A lot of gratitude. Humble because this is a new venue. And I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful in this time. There's so much to worry about. And yet there's so much good that's happening, change that's underway that I think is reconnecting us to the land, to each other, and to Mother Earth, Mother Water, to nature, which is, without it, we wouldn't be here. We are part of this whole world. So I do feel hopeful. My heart is hopeful and thankful.
Wow, that's beautiful to hear. I'm checking in with my heart, and it is much louder than normal. It's really beating. It's been feeling really heavy today. I watched the news this morning, and as a digital vegan, I don't do that very often. I do it very carefully. And man, with what the records that the government won't release about Malcolm X and this thing in Alabama with that people who are trying to get pregnant through in vitro fertilization, with an embryo being a frozen embryo being judged to be a living child. It stirred up a lot. So I'm feeling that today. Definitely feeling the heart racing in this moment. I'm so grateful to have you here and to have this conversation. So
Well, perhaps we can start as we usually do, and for the audience to also understand, and it can be a jump off. When we begin our conversations, we want to be intentional. So we take a candle and we light it. And, everyone loves sitting around a fire, right? We watch that flame.
It is beautiful.
Because we are deeply connected, even if we don't feel that connection. Yeah, we all love sitting around a fire.
Dipping a
And
finger.
then we take some water. And in the Western science history, theory of how we all came to be, so there was the fire explosion of Big Bang and whatnot, but then life emerged out of the ocean. So water is life. And we were birthed out of water, and we need water every day. So we take a sip of water with reverence. Another R, reverence.
Mhm. And one of my favorite things that we do is we bless, we like offer water, the pure blessings to all four directions and to each other. And our computers get a little wet, but it really it feels very special. I'll share one time I had the great privilege of being on a reservation for a Women in Water coming together ceremony, and a grandmother blessed my soft spot of my head, and this was just 2 years ago. And then I spent a whole year blessing myself with 3 drops of water on my head to hold that memory in reverence, so that I was embodying and holding the sacredness of that experience every day. And that's the kind of energy that I feel when we connect, when we bring our ceremony together and we engage our ancestors. We open our hearts to that hopefulness that you're feeling today, that we can bring because we're coming together with intention. So let's take a couple of good deep breaths. Thank you. Nice. So Rita, Renee, Toll-DuBois, and I met through a weekly anti-racist embodiment practice with members of Extinction Rebellion. But through this anti-racist practice, Renee and I started to meet one-on-one, first on your farm in central Massachusetts, and more recently as a weekly ritual of recalling and celebrating ancestry, where our conversations have delved into micro and macro visions for land justice and rerouting ourselves in ceremony, which I'm pretty sure we're going to get into a little bit of that in this intimate conversation. So, Renee, please introduce yourself and share some of the ways your heart is nourished by some of the social justice actions or peace-oriented work that you do.
Well, my work has been for quite a while. I did a lot of youth work. I was a classroom teacher and outdoor environmental ed facilitator. And I'm now a farmer, and I invite people to come to the farm through an organization, and they stay a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Many are under 40. They're anywhere from 18 to whatever age. I've had even older, but largely 20s. And to be able to engage, we're doing the work, and so engaging ourselves in growing food, we raise a lot of questions about what is our relationship to the other beings that are here on the land. What's our relationship to each other in some sense, but to the issues of the time. And I love to engage in big topics. And it's great because it's while we're doing something, we're making a difference. And that has been my work all along, because teaching, there's one agenda, but you have the opportunity to engage the young people and learn from them, hear them, see where they're really at. And so from middle school, the age has gotten older and older, but the interpersonal engagement with really what is going on, what is our responsibility, and always through the medium of the environment. That's been my thing. And so when we're having these intense conversations, that nourishes me. When I learn something about their perspective and we're talking across some sort of difference, whether it's, I mean, there are lots of differences, lots of identities we all have. I just get very excited. It feels really good. That nourishes me quite a bit.
Wow. Thank you. And I have to say that our conversations that have become weekly have been very nourishing for me too. And let's share with viewers and listeners what we do. Like we've you want to give some background to that? Because I think that the ceremonies that you hold on the farm and the ways that you honor the seasons, the solstice, equinox, and other important days have informed this practice a lot. We recently celebrated the solstice together, and that was a very special day. Do you want to share a little bit about that, and then talk about our practice?
Well, the context, I guess I want to, you said, history or context. The reality of racism has caught my attention since college. And increasingly, I've come to understand it's not just racism, but it's a bigger picture. White supremacy, a term we've heard. And my current orientation, part of my current orientation is coming to feel that, wow, I'm totally disconnected from any cultural traditions, spiritual traditions that have anything similar to being earth-based. I've gone to some indigenous ones, African Americans, and they're very strongly connected to culture. There may be songs or spiritual things you do, food. And I realize I'm cut off from that. And looking at history, I see that where my people are from in Europe, we're colonized and then colonized again and then colonized again. And I feel that in that process, I lost that connection to the land that is culturally based. So more recently, and in the activities you and I are doing, it's also been disconnected from my feelings and my body. So seeing that XR offered this embodied anti-racism practice, wow, what is that? What's embodied anti-racism? And so connecting feelings to my body, what are those body experiences? That's the way you begin with the heart. So how am I feeling? What's my heart and all the meanings of heart mean? And applying this to seeing that when we're distracted and not connected, we can be not very helpful in any situation. And so there's that. But there's been with the farm, my own place where people are coming, gave me an opportunity. When they come, we have I call a ceremonial fire, but it's a welcome fire. But it's an intentional space to come at the fire, and we ground ourselves in the place, the north, south, east, west, where the water is, where the sun is coming. So those four elements of earth, air, fire, and water that really are what we're made of and what supports us and all the life around us. So I began a practice, and during COVID, I had a fairly constant set of visitors so that we were doing it every week. Every week I had a practice at the fire of recognizing these four elements but also I have identified four, I guess they're values, orientations. Relationship that involves responsibility, respect, and reciprocity. And given the climate emergency that we're in, resilience is there, and the anti-racism work, the wanting to get rid of white supremacy, it becomes what's our responsibility around repair, restoration, and regeneration. So I have 8 R's.
Nice.
But
Nice.
we look at them and each week reflect and either what element is calling us or which of those themes has come up, and what was a curiosity from the week in terms of engaging with the land. And then this other group that you and I both joined around ancestral recovery and cultural recovery
Through Wide Awake.
deepens it even further, puts me back in the landscape. What is my relationship to this land that I'm on? And my family has been in New England and part of it largely in Massachusetts for 8, 9, 10 generations. And yet we came as settlers. And as we've been witnessing, many of us, a consequence of what can happen, settlers onto someone else's territory, disrupt the land, damage the people, kill them, change their life ways. So these are the things that I struggle with, think about, and where ritual is.
And that's that healing energy allows us to keep growing our capacity for being in reality and some of the realities that you talked about. We've talked often about the atrocities in Gaza. We've signed the petitions. We've called the senators. In fact, you call daily, which is so impressive. But with the fact that the United States still is on the offensive with weapons and dark money and blocking the ceasefire, it feels like spitting in the face of democracy. And the toll that it's taking on Palestinians is unfathomable, along with the devastation to the natural world. And you start kind of like that way that we can spiral into despair. Hope, it's not necessarily the opposite side of the coin of despair, but there's balance. And these simple things, having conversations, building friendships, and being in a reverent relationship to what could otherwise be called the mundane, perhaps. I mean, water, I don't know why for me, it can sometimes feel mundane, but then I can catch myself and be like, oh, it's sacred. It's sacred. And that catching that moment just fills my soul back up again. I guess I'd put it that way. Like it's that awareness of, wow, water is life. It's precious. It's amazing.
One thing I do want to say,
Please.
because we've both mentioned Indigenous, is it's important for, and I want to make this connection to earth, to the elements, my own. I'm not trying to steal, appropriate Indigenous. The re-indigenizing means finding my way to something that has actual meaning and connection to my own history. So I'm a science teacher. So I went to what's the origin story in the Western science. And through that, saw that it actually says very similar things, that we are all kin. I mean, evolution means we are the youngest beings. I mean, I'm sure there are new things coming, but that seeing that going from my own scientific approach said we're all related. And because I'm farming, I'm on the land, I literally see yeah, what's our relationship to water? I know about droughts. I know about these heavy floods. I can feel the warmth because we have really hot summers now and milder winters. So I'm living, experiencing those four elements that we have in us, around us. So I'm really quite blessed. And that's part of why I did the farming, was some to self-sufficiency. But wow, it has deepened my understanding about so much, so much. But I did want to say about the rituals that and ceremony that we're finding our own way and seeing if we can find any real ancestral roots through all of that long history of colonization.
Well, I'd like to, there's a couple of questions that I have for you around the cultural conditioning of colonization and the rituals. Like you had shared with me that you've done a medicine wheel on your farm. And because you've done this research and understand that medicine wheels were used in Celtic tradition or, you know, in other European traditions, that opened up so much for me to be like, oh, wow, I don't have to feel unworthy of some kind of beautiful ceremony of that nature, of the medicine wheel. Would you like to speak about that a little bit?
Well, I'm glad to hear that it opened it up, and that's part of we've been cut off from our own European, often our own European roots. But the sun rises every day, and wherever you are aware it's daytime. So that just orienting to the sun and it goes down, we know cycles. And as you earlier said, this intentionality, the awareness. And so I needed to, for my farm, know where south was anyways, because I need to orient my fields. And so I immediately got where's east, south, west, and north. And it turns out my water is in the south. So the sun is rising in the east, the water's in the south. My largest field is in the west, and the north is the colder part. And so that when I take people who are arriving or visitors on the tour, it's not some ooh thing. This is the East, and the place of the beginning. For me, the day begins here, and this is where my plants begin. And for me, I think of the South for water, and I have water. Here's the water, you know, and the earth. Well, here we are looking at all the fields. And so that it's grounded in what's actually here. The language looks like it's someone else's language. But I think if you took away all the modern lights, we all would be knowing about the cycles of day and night and stars and the moon a whole lot more. And the cycles of the seasons. And so I have wanted, I know I have English heritage, and those people have been conquered in major ways multiple times. So trying to find an indigenous, I think I may have Celtic, which is why I was digging up the Celtic and found that medicine wheel in a Celtic tradition. But I also wanted to do some sort of ceremony beyond just a fire. And well, we have 4 big events, the 2 solstices and the 2 equinoxes. So I just pulled from other people, made up something until it could become my own. And then I found the farmers notice what's the last 10-hour day and the first 10-hour day. And they correspond to, some people call it the Persephone, which is an ancient Greek story. Persephone goes down into the underworld, and her mother Demeter's bereft, so everything dies, and then she comes back in spring, and it corresponds right about to the midpoint between the equinox and the solstice. And people had holidays around the world on those days, right around there. So I'm finding that even by connecting just to this farm cycle, I see it's not just one people's, it's not, quote, indigenous like here in this land, territory, all over the world, because we all lived on the land successfully. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here today. So one of the 10-hour day comes at the beginning of February. And in Ireland, so going back to the Celtic, people have heard of St. Patrick in March. Well, there's St. Brigid, but many of these Christian holidays have been superimposed on what was already there. And there was a deity, Brigid, and I don't know Celtic, Irish, Gaelic, so I may be mispronouncing how she was, and there are whole traditions linked to water and to fire.
Apparently she turned bath water into beer, right? That was one of her things. She turned bath water.
I don't know. I don't know. But it's 1,500 years apparently since she died. Ireland last year declared she's the other patron saint, and now it's a big deal. It's still as a saint because of the Catholic heritage in Ireland, but she goes much longer, and people have been carrying on many of these older traditions, pre-Christian traditions, so that I don't know, it's an excuse to get together.
Yes.
And have something to be intentional, but also party in some way, not just to be randomly having fun, but there's a reason, and if your lives depend on your food, you're definitely going to be about wanting to make sure the weather's good, the fertility is good. It wasn't that everyone was like sex maniacs. This is your food. And we're entering the time that many people were running out of their food when they were traditionally just living off of what they grew.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you wouldn't be using up all your food, but you'd be partying.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's so much to say about that. And I want to say a couple things about Brigid because you brought her back to me. I have been to Brigid's Well in Ireland, and you brought that back to me. And my grandson was recently born just 10 days ago. And with what I was reading about on the news today, I want to say two things. One is the creating of that Brigid's cross and putting it out with my grandson's little onesie to be blessed on St. Brigid's Day meant so much to me. I took a lot of time to make the cross, and that in and of itself felt beautiful. And to do that, and then the ceremony that you created around that I did, I'm so grateful. It just like, it's so nourishing, really deep soul nourishing. You can still feel it embodied in me. And then another thing that I learned about Brigid just ties to about the news and what I was saying about the IVF and what's going on in Alabama. Brigid performed blessed abortions to nuns. And she was just such a fierce protector of women. And I think that's a big reason why Brigid is coming back worldwide, way beyond just in Ireland, from what I understand. And I think that's such a really positive note to leave this particular episode on, because the question for me is always, how do we heal the effects of misogyny and the compound effects of capitalism and climate change? It really starts with the beginning of disrespecting women. And I know that we can say so much more about that. In fact, I think we should have another episode. But I want to tie this up with the beautiful things that you've said about going from being a science teacher to a farmer, and the ways that you celebrate the earth knowing all of these wonderful, scientific things, but transformational things that you do in real time with other people, woofers, and the folks that you house and you educate. I'm just so grateful to know you, Renee. And what's your final words?
We all know that we come from the Earth Mother, and we come from a mother and from the ocean mother. So matrilineal, matrifocal, whatever it was, but our mothers had a powerful place. Men do too.
Yes.
I'm not saying not, but yes, let's bring mothers back.
Well, Renee, and all of our listeners and viewers, I'm Wren Ribeiro, and I thank you for joining.
This initiative is supported by Inner Fortune, the full-life self-coaching journal that is now digital. Join us for peace, and thank you for your heart.